Thanks for joining us. This is yet another one of the amazing operations manager workshops that we put on. Today, we're going to be looking at streamlining your learners' communication with automated notifications. So how they really play a big value into the TMS itself. Yep, there we go. So as always, if you've been here before, we're going to do those quick introductions, some platform updates, look at automated notifications, some best practices, and then we'll kind of wrap up as we finish the session out. So let's look at really what have our folks over on the TMS been delivering. We're going to look at some of the April releases and do a little bit of a show and tell. So this is kind of an exciting one for me. If you are familiar with us, we have been doing some updates on the TMS. So we have done the catalog that got redesigned. We did the dashboards, they got redesigned. So this is kind of another one in that same feature of getting a redesign, really. And it's the learning paths and the learning path details. So some of the really cool things that we've done is really just to make it more of that modern UI, improve some features like the capabilities of searching, add in things that just make it look and feel much of a better platform rather than that just standard approach. So we have added some of those improvements to the UI. We've also done some redesigning. So now we've started to add those icons that you're seeing in other of the catalogs. We've also got counts for the number of courses in the path. We've got stuff like stacked tiles. So you can see that there is, it's a learning path. There's multiple courses within there. We got the heart icons, like, as we talked about, we've added now some of these icons just to make it look a little bit nicer, easier access to get to things as well. We've obviously done the hover over state has now been redesigned, so you get more visibility. And then we've got like a different view, whereas before when it came to the learning paths, it was just a standard learning path and it went all the way down. Now we've got that more broader approach where we can start to see like a grid view and we can see the list view, and that really is up to the user's preference. I know for me, I like to see it all as a grid. I like to be able to see that kind of navigating down, scrolling down doesn't really work for me, but again, it's for everyone's preference. And then finally, we've got that learning path card view, which now kind of reveals a stat view to bring more focus on the course sets themselves. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, if you haven't already had the chance to see, I'm going to show you quickly just what does that look like and how does it start to make the TMS now further come to light if you're using those learning paths. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share. You should be able to now see the Scalable Learning Paths catalog. This is in my organization of the operations manager workshops. So it's really more designed for me as I deliver these out. But as you can see, we can see this stacked view. We can start to see these icons really come into play. We have the new where we haven't even started it. And then we've got that started. I'm able to include images as well that make it look and feel a bit better. And then as time goes on, as we've talked about in previous workshops, is that we're able to add feedback in there. So over time, if your users are interested in giving you the ability to allow them to put some feedback in, you can start to build up those stars, and it's all based around the feedback and what the user gives. As we said, the grid view and the list view is up here the same. As I mentioned, for me, I like that more of a grid view. I just think it looks much of a nicer approach. But again, it's that personal preference of how you want. And then you do have this option here, like as you can see, I have 3 learning paths in my organization on my account right now. But if I had multiple learning paths, I can quickly navigate in and search for them. And we do have that filtering option as well. So I'm able to get some more filters as well. And in areas that I want, maybe I've got multiple learning paths in different areas. And my focus is, hey, I want to know about a specific skill area, or maybe it's a specific job role. So I can go in and I can click on those and apply those features. So as we see right here, I'm going to look at my beginner programming learning path. As you can see, I already started it. But when I hit the view path, I'm able to get this now. Again, it's more of a, we took the design that we have done, we've updated the course profile page for the learners. We did that same kind of style and we applied it to the learning paths. But what I really like about this now is that we're able to see things like how many courses are in here, how many things have I got to accomplish, roughly how much percentage wise will it take. I can quickly see how many hours this entire learning path is going to take. If you're definitely building out your learning paths, I highly recommend, putting the audience level and a description. So my description is very basic, but it really gives the learner then the ability to know what the purpose of this learning path is. If it's focused on, so for example, if I look at my learning path here, you can see it's all programming languages. So maybe I would write in here, this learning path is for programming languages for beginners. I'm giving them just a little bit of an understanding of what the purpose of this learning path is that they have been assigned. And again, you can see in these 1, 2, 3. So these are the recommended options in when you take them. So as you go into your learning paths, the goal is that they take 1, 2, and 3 in that order. And hopefully the goal is that they build upon as you're thinking about these, and think about AWS, and you're just a beginner in AWS, right? You launch the lab. The first lab is a really basic lab. It gets you just kind of to navigate around. The second lab maybe gets you to do a couple of activities. They're a little bit more advanced, and maybe the third one then really pushes the boat out and gets you to kind of go a little bit further in. Now, learning paths, the nice thing about them is they don't have to say in order, right? So that you can have users switch, they can go from one to the other, but learning paths, the purpose of those is to guide the learner on it, take them in this order, and you will find that you'll learn and build your skills so that when you launch the final lab, the one that's in the last right here for my number 3, is you'll have the skills to be able to perform what we're asking in that lab. They are really nice things, and I like how we've redesigned them. Again, if you saw before, it was like 1, 2, 3, and it went down in a row. It kind of got a little bit confusing, but I think this one really makes it pop a little bit more. Again, we're still able to allow that if they want, they can still do, if they're sequential in that order, 1, 2, 3. And again, we're able to keep some of those nice things. And we can have a look at here. I can hit review, and I can kind of see what's gone on in my course assignment here. So as you can see, it's started up. What we have is, it's just a video, so it's automatically created it and populated it for me. And you can see I can hit the continue. You can see what it is. It's just a video in here, and I can have a look at what does that learning path. This is contained. So this is one of the 3 courses. So having a lot more information in here, providing the user with the abilities to go through their courses as they choose. I like it. I think it looks really, really nice. I think it's got a lot to it. I think as learners, we'll really benefit from using these learning paths. And I think now that we have gone ahead and we've created something new and something that looks much better, I think we'll start to see more and more people building out their learning paths. Hopefully, your learners get a lot from those. So that's super exciting that we were able to create this new view, and hopefully you'll go away and kind of have a little play. If you were at one of the workshops before, we really focused on what learning paths were and what the purpose was behind them. But I highly recommend now with this new view is go in and really look, can you provide your learners a more of an experience of where to go next, rather than this this catalog approach where it's, they've got access to 15 different courses, but they're not showing what order to take. That learning path guides them down there. So that is super exciting. I think it's going to be an awesome one if you go in and implement them.
Okay, question.
Yep.
So are the learning paths available now?
Yep.
Where do I find those, Bev?
We've always had learning paths, so they're based on subscriptions. So when you go to the TMS, give me one second.
I'm going to poke around here while you're.
Yeah, if you go to your admin, the TMS admin, and they should be under, I believe it's. See, this is where you catch me because I use the search filter for everything. But if you go to subscriptions, you should see subscription profiles, and at the very bottom of that tile, there is a learning path.
Son of a. There they are.
Right? They're really cool, like really awesome things.
Okay.
Highly recommend checking out the YouTube video that we've got of the, I think it was 2 workshops, could have been 2 workshops ago, maybe 3 workshops ago. We really delved into like building out learning paths.
I think I was on that one, and I remember going through the activity of creating the learning path. I never came back and worked with it in production, which is why it probably didn't stick with me very well. So it's interesting because we have a new program we're looking to launch for customers that would take them down, a path of courses. Currently, I don't know that everything in the course has a skillable lab associated with it. So some things, one of the courses may just be a theory-based course. Now, I don't know if they could put something that would, give them a video to watch or give them reference material or something as part of that quote unquote learning path. But I'm wondering that this would be something we could use to kind of show that learner their progress and where they've started and where they're heading and how far along they are. And like I said, a lot of them, and if I'm understanding correctly, in that learning path, you could have, let's say one of my first classes will be Intro to Python, right? Mm-hmm. So they're going to do a Python class. I got a lab for that, a course and everything set up. They'll do that one. Then they'll jump into PL300. Okay. So that's one of the mock labs. They'll do that. Come back. They may do some SQL stuff, right? So it can mix and match different courses, if you will. Is that right?
Yeah, you have to apply to it. So what you would do is when you build out your subscription, you can build it and you put them in your subscription, or you can build it by adding learning paths. If you go to create learning paths, and then on the top you see courses, you can add courses. The only way though that a learning path is assigned is you have to have it associated with a subscription profile. So you would maybe want to create like a custom one.
Create the subscription profile first.
Yeah, and then you can assign it then with the courses of the learning path. They're really good. When we did this workshop before on learning paths, it was the old view because it had not been updated. Obviously, this is just the new one that we've done. So you can absolutely have it where, like you just saw then, when I launched one of my courses, it was just a video. So that you absolutely can have in the courses that you build in the TMS, you're able to put just a video in there. You can add just links to websites. You can add materials.
So would the profile be like my program that they're going to go through?
Yeah, you can call it your I would call it that one, and it's specific for that, right? And then in that subscription profile, you would create your own courses that go inside that subscription profile, and then you can assign that subscription profile out, and then you build the learning path and you associate it with the subscription profile.
Okay, I'm gonna have to tinker with this. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Wheels turning, looking for application, and then also I'm thinking like, another one that we run into often is with students who are registering for, say an Intro to Python course. We want them to have a little bit of programming background, right? So a lot of times we're sending out like a little questionnaire ahead of time to try to get, a pulse on what they are. And would a learning path possibly also help with kind of collecting that data or giving them maybe a video to watch right? So you're going to do this part first before you come into whatever the class is. And then that class would be followed up by you're kind of promoting what the next course would be for them, even though it wouldn't automatically unlock that lab for them to do though, right?
Yeah. So you would have to apply. So on the course page, you would have to apply a prerequisite.
Okay.
On like the one that you want them to not be able to just launch, you would have a prerequisite set on the course that would prevent, like, let's say for example you're doing lab 1, lab 2, and lab 3, and in order to do lab 2 and lab 3, you kind of have to do lab 1 to open up lab 2, lab 2 to open up lab 3. From there, what you would do is you apply the restriction on lab 2 and say, the prerequisite for this is, you have had to have launched lab 1.
Completed lab 1.
Yeah. So you just apply that on. So the good thing is even when you're building out subscriptions, if your course has that prerequisite on, when you do build out your subscription profiles, make sure that I think it's right at the bottom. The subscription has, I want to say it's called like enable prerequisites or bypass prerequisites. There's something at the bottom there. You have to make sure that you select it, because if not, what will happen is it will automatically bypass they'll bypass the subscription profile, will bypass the prerequisite that you've got. So you have to make sure when you have your subscription profile that you still enable your prerequisite from the course. Okay,
fair enough. And I see we have another guest, so we'll let you get back to your previously scheduled presentation.
No worries. I know Sharif will probably, I know Sharif very well, so I'm sure he's probably like, oh, this is kind of neat. So all learning for everybody, and that's the goal of these workshops, is sometimes, we have to divert a little bit and go a little bit deeper into something, but absolutely happy to, help and work through any of those. And again, if you brains like mine, where it's fried and never remembers anything until you see it and you're like, oh wait, there is, I'm sure Kristen can drop it in there, that workshop that we did, just kind of refresh your mind of how building out those learning paths work. And the new view is fantastic. I love the new view. I think it looks really, really good.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so hopefully you're now able to go ahead and see my automated notifications, and that is what the topic that we're looking at today. So automated notifications are a feature that is built into our TMS, and they're quite often underutilized. I find that really not many people use them, and I think what they do is they expose some really great ways to communicate out to your learners. To me, I find it a very, really an essential communication tool that we've got, because you're able to notify your users for all purposes when they're inside of the TMS. So when we think of like what are automated notifications, well, they're really, really simply just a way to notify learners, whether it be your instructors, your operations managers, or learners, to something that has happened inside the scalable TMS. And so why would they be useful? Well, they work on action triggers. So in order for the notification actually to be sent out, that an action has to have happened within the TMS so that you can go ahead and notify your learners, or again, ops managers or instructors, that something has changed. It could be the class time has changed, or it could be for a learner, it could be that they've been assigned, a subscription profile, or it can be anything from a notification to your ops manager saying that this learner has completed this course. And so what they do is they save you a significant amount of time by taking away like that manual process of notifications. I know some people, when they create a user in the TMS and they've assigned them maybe a course assignment, or maybe they've given them a subscription profile, they have to go back to a separate platform, go in, email the user and say, here is all your credentials, this is where you go, this is what you do. With automated notifications inside the TMS, it bypasses all of that for you, because the trigger that you set sends out that notification to the end user saying, you have an account, you have already pre-built this email out, so you don't have to even copy and paste it. It works based on that. So it's a really great tool to use, and it really makes it quite an efficient way to get out communication to your end users. So to me, I'm always one of those people where I have to understand the whys. Why is this the way it is? And this particular screenshot that you see is the framework behind the process. So you can start to build out in your head, how does all of this work? And what is it that happens in order for this notification to go out? And then what happens when it does go out? Where is it all? And then when you start to build these things out in your head and you're able to understand the process, you're then able to manipulate it so that you can start to find things that work best for you. So when we think of a trigger, right, there's a trigger where it's an event. So we add an action so that notification can go out. You then pick some filters that go with that. So you're really defining when the notification is sent out. Then we've got like a trigger type. So who's triggering this event to go? And then who is this going to go to, right? So we've got those triggers, we know where they're at, we know who, and we know why, we know what we're sending, and we know what the event was. And then we look at like the email template. So the email template, or really the notification that the end user gets, is something that you have already pre-created in the email. Is great because you can add replacement texts. So for example, you can add in their user's first name, and as a replacement text, it sees it as user's first name. So I get a notification that says, hey, Bev, whereas on the back end, what you've built is it says, hey, first name, right? So you're able to understand, you can see who it's going to, and you can see what text you're putting in there. And then you can add some restrictions to it. So you can have things like everybody in your organization gets updated, or you can have it so that it's on specific courses. So you're really defining when that notification gets sent out. It's really specifically for a course. It's not maybe for everybody. It's just a very specific, unique case. So looking further, we understood the framework behind it, right? So as we understand more of that now, let's kind of look into what are some of the tips that you'll need as you're building out your notifications. So as you start to learn about more of where notifications can come in handy, we'll give you some tips and tricks on how to make sure that you're building the most effective notification, and giving you some use case scenarios of where it might possibly work for you guys. So the first thing is you're always going to pick a trigger. And the trigger is, again, what causes a notification to be sent out. And there are two types of triggers when you're building out your notifications. You've got an action-based trigger. So this is when an action is performed within the platform. So an example of this would be a learner has completed a course assignment. The action trigger is that when the course assignment is changed to complete, it triggers off this notification out. And one of those use cases could be you're an ops manager and you need to know when has that learner completed their course assignment. Maybe it's so that you can assign them another one, or maybe that you simply need to update your own platform, or any form of why you need to know why a learner has completed their course assignment, a badge, a certificate, etc. Whereas when we look at a time-based trigger, that relies on a time so that the notification is sent out. And an example of this would be notifying learners when a class starts within a 24-hour period. The time trigger is 24 hours before the class is starting. Most people, I would say probably 90% of people who use triggers tend to use the action-based triggers because they're more popular for operations managers or instructors on wanting that type of information. But it's always good to know like the different types of notifications, triggers that can send out your notifications. Again, for the time-based one, that they're really good to alert people, like when is your course assignment finishing? When is your subscription about to expire? When are your classes about to begin? And just things like that that allow them to be a little bit more based around some of the timing factors. Oh, I went across one too quickly there. And then what we have to do is we understand who triggers the notifications. So understanding during the building phase, it's helpful for you to know and get a better grasp on what you're trying to achieve with this notification. So on your create a notification plan, you'll have two options. You have a user and you have an administrator, and those are the ones that are causing the trigger. So if we're looking at action-based, what one of those is going to understand who's triggering that notification. When we think of a regular user, we think of that as being a student, your basic users. Whereas when we think of an administrator, that's someone with the administrative permission. So that's your operations instructor, operations managers, and your instructors. And triggers basically are exactly that, right? Is a person who is triggering that event, right, because it's action-based, would be a user when they have completed their course and it's gone from, in session to complete. The action-based happens, but it's triggered by the user, right? If, for example, you want to cancel a learner's notification, you as the administrator go in, you're canceling it. The action is the cancel piece, and the administrator is the one that has done the action in order for it to be triggered. So there's just some different ways of thinking when you're building it out. Who's going to be triggering your notification? 9 times out of 10 when it comes to things like classes being cancelled, or there's been a change in the course, or there is, you're adding an instructor. Those are going to be triggered by the administrator. The user ones come more from things like completing a course assignment, attending the class, enrolling in the class. Those are going to be triggered usually by the user themselves. Then we got to start looking at who are the people that are going to receive these notifications. So part of the process when building it is knowing your target audience and who is going to get the notification from the TMS. So these are usually set by the roles and permissions on accounts. So while some roles are standard for all users, so for example, you'll notice every one of your accounts, whether you're an operations manager or an instructor, you'll always, even me, have a basic user also attached. So some of those things just apply of all of them. So remembering who is who. We also have some other things like your account executives. If you have an account executive on your accounts, then you can use those as someone who can receive notifications. You really would more be towards the most people you're going to use, again, is going to be your regular users, your instructors, and even you if you want as an operations manager. When you are building it out, you have to include a valid email address from the line. And what happens is when you use an invalid email address, so when you're sending, think of this as I'm sending out an email to you. If you use a fake email or invalid email address, sometimes it can be rejected, sometimes it cannot send. So we always recommend putting a valid email address on. One of the cool ways that you can kind of navigate around this is if your team has an alias, you can use that instead of using your own. It won't show. It doesn't show up on the sent. It will just show it from like the Scalable TMS. You won't actually see the email address that's associated, but it's really important to know that you have to include that valid email address. You can always add CC, so you can always add somebody else. Maybe, as I say, maybe you're as an instructor, you want to be notified when a certain thing happens. You as operations managers want to notify your instructors that this class has been changed, but you also need to include somebody else as an administrator, always including them so that they can update maybe a secondary platform. What you would do there is making sure that you add that CC email address on there. Otherwise, the email notification will go to the email address used on the user account. And again, if somebody's used a fake email address when they've created their TMS account, unfortunately, that notification will go off to that fake email address, and making sure that your users always have valid email addresses. Always try to make sure that you use relevant information. Try and not make them so generic, make them a little bit more specific. you remember when you create this, the process of creating this takes a little bit longer, but once they're in place, you're going to save so much time because you're not going to have to rewrite or change things because you would use those replacement texts to allow information to be pre-populated in there. So for example, I would put in, if I'm canceling a class, I can put in my text, dear user, unfortunately, and then I can put the class name on date, has been cancelled, reach out to whoever I needed. That can be then used across all borders, so you don't have to then go, okay, I need to copy and paste this, I need to take out this class name and apply this class name. It can be done based on that trigger. You've cancelled the class that's in the TMS. It's taken the class name and it has applied it already. So making sure that you're always using relevant information, make it quite more specific than it would be just the, hey, this is cancelled. That leads us on to making sure you use replacement tokens. Again, this is going to be the top thing for you, is personalizing those emails and making sure that they have all relevant information. Replacement tokens are going to be key to this. Really do take your tokens to your notifications to the next level. Again, I think once we start to see things that come in towards us, being that they're our name, or if they, they have more relevant information and the replacement token does that for you, you'll really find that most people will start to enjoy getting these notifications. And again, like I say, it's going to take some time to get set up, but once you're set up and once you're in there and you're doing it, you'll find that it's going to be so much better. My tip for this, number 8, is double check the settings. So making sure that you have on your organization, so inside the TMS, making sure that you have notifications enabled, making sure if you do create accounts for people, that you have enabled down at the bottom. You scroll all the way down from creating a user, you'll see enable or disable notifications. Always keep them on, especially if you're going to be allowing those notifications to go out. Making sure that your users always have a valid email address, that it's not something made up and it's not something that they can just, throw away. Because if you're sending out valid information and you're sending things out and the email address doesn't work and they don't get that notification, they just get a little bit upset. So we highly recommend that you always do that. And it's also another way that this kind of leads into a total different topic, but using and making sure that the email address is valid. When we can't get into accounts, or when your users can't get into accounts, they get, sign me in, they forget the password, and if they've used an invalid email address, it's a lot harder for us to get those accounts passwords changed. So it's making sure those. And then my final one for double checking the settings is making sure that if you are using class, if you're setting up classes in the TMS, that you enable the notification on the class setup. If you don't pop that in, it's not going to trigger it and nothing's going to happen. So always making sure that you have those in there. So double checking your features, making sure that you've got everything you need in order to get those notifications out to your end users. Always test running notifications. It's an opportunity to verify that all the information looks correct. Do it 3 or 4 times. And making sure that your triggers are working before you go out, and then always enable your notifications. So when you're ready, go ahead and make sure you enable the notification. What I am going to show you is some tips and tricks on the platform itself. What does it look like when you're building these out? There's a couple of things on here that I found over time working in the platform. I'll be like, why is this not working? And I want to make sure that we hit that point, because it really is like super frustrating when you go in to actually send out your notification and you're like, my replacements are not there. Why are they not there? I don't understand. So I'm going to make sure you get that one as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put this back here. So from your site administration page, you obviously can all tell this is my tile page. We're going to look at notifications. You can always look to see what notifications you currently have within your org. You can see which ones have been sent out. I don't think I've ever sent any out, but you can look to see when they were sent out and at what point they were. But we're really focused on creating a new notification plan. So as I was saying, this is where you start to build out your core notification plans. You give it your name. So I'm going to call it test notifications, just because it's super basic. The description is simply if you ever leave the organization and this is all set up, you giving it, like anything, a description helps them. So showing off is what I'm going to use this one as. Your organization. So if, for example, I have rights over 2 organizations, making sure you're selecting the right organization. And then we can look here at your trigger events. So this is where I'm saying where you vitally pay attention to this piece. If you don't remember anything, just at least remember this one. When you hit add event, you're going to get this option to look at all these different options here, right? There's a scroll. And what you're going to do is, I'm pretty positive you'll probably do what I did in the very beginning, is I want to say a class enrollment was cancelled. So I go through and I continue through here and I go, okay, now I'm going to start writing out my notifications. And I'm like, hey, why is there no replacement text here? This doesn't, it says add these, where are they? I don't know. What you have to make sure you do when you've selected your trigger event, you hit add. And now you start to get some other things. So you get some filters, and then you go to your notifications. Now you can start to see your replacement tokens. So if you don't remember anything, at least remember to hit the add button on your trigger, because you will be like, I just don't understand why this is not working. This doesn't make sense. Always making sure that you add the actual event to it. So for here, well, let's look at, I'm going to do a course assignment. Now let's do something fun. Let's do a user account created. This is going to be great for when I create users and I want them to get a notification that I have created their account for them. This is a step where if I don't have to create the user, then go back to a second tool to send this notification out. The trigger is going to be me, because I am an operations manager. I'm the one that's creating the account. And then I have this option to who am I going to send it to, right? So I'm going to send it to my user. Here, I'm going to make sure that I add in a valid email address. Maybe Kristen needs to know as well that I'm creating this. So every time a new account is created, I want Kristen to know maybe she's in charge of all the records. And here I'm going to call this, what is my subject? Just like a regular email, user account. Let's do user account credentials. And then I've enabled it. Again, as you can see, I just went to hit the notifications and I've not added add. Some of them don't have any additional features. I can go in here and notifications, and now I can write in here. And when I'm writing in, you know, I can do hello, student, first name. Just going to put that in so you can see it. It goes in. And now I can start to get a little bit more. I can add things like maybe I am creating accounts. And I am going to give them, everyone's going to have the same username and password, or maybe I give them the different one and I go, hello, go to omwbev.learnondemand.net. Your username is, and I can add in here the student username and password, student password. So as I was saying, like building these out is where the main part of work comes. But once you've done this piece, you'll be good to go. Yes, David, you have a question for us?
I do, real quick. So on the like student password, for example, when we set up our accounts, we've got it set to use a standard password for all students on account creation, right?
Yep.
After that, if the student has changed their password, will this send the password that they've changed it to?
No, we don't have like a update if a password's been changed. This would just
Okay.
be on creation. So what I would do if I was doing this, right, I'd put, if it's a standard one, please change your password.
My thinking was more along the lines of this is great for initial account creation, but for the
Yep.
repeat student, I often get somebody who I don't remember what my password was, right? They, you know, so they're repeat offenders. They completely forgot that they were going to use this platform again. So generally what happens, we have out of like our CRM, we have workflows that send out notifications, and we always, with every class, we include, if it's a skillable thing, their email addresses, their username, and then whatever our standard password is. That catches like 90% of them, so this would probably be fine. Occasionally somebody will say, well, that didn't work for me, or that password's not working, which is where they've changed it and they don't remember what it was changed to. So I was just thinking, like, one of the other triggers I saw is like if they got enrolled into a class. So every time I enroll them into a new class, I could say, hey, you've been enrolled to, and here is the URL, your username, your password. But, and I could probably still do that. And like I said, it would catch, I'm thinking, the majority of them.
Yeah,
So,
there's no,
just curious.
There's nothing on for, like, you know, if the only way would be like that forgot password, but it can be a challenge.
Yeah. Perfect. All right.
We can look at one of the other triggers afterwards. So this is just
you're
like
good.
that.
You're good. You explained it perfectly. That's great.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's like, again, like I said, he's kind of getting into it is just going in and playing and building out and working out whether or not, like, does this even work for me? Some people use this is because they create their accounts. Some people don't, because they, you know, they use keys, right? So it really is what works for everyone. Different triggers. I mean, there's lots of different, you know, like I wrote here, you know, go to this one, but maybe in time it changes and I totally forget that I, you know, had this notification in, and this now is the wrong URL. It's always good to use triggers that, you know, if things change, then, you know, you using those replacement tokens is much of a better option. And then finally, you want to be specific again for your organization. So I am only wanting to apply it to anyone who's in my OMW account. And then we just hit save. And just like that, I've created this notification. And obviously I haven't got anything set up here. But what we would do is when we create an account, we can go ahead and we can send out a notification. So we're looking at it being a student that receives the information. Let's see if we can trigger it. So let me go here. Create a user. I'm going to see if it's going to let me do it. I just don't know if it will, because I have an account with my email address. So let's see. Yeah. I can't send a trigger, and I think Kristen has one too. Let's see. Yes. Oh, there we go. Let's just change this to Kristen. I'm going to use the generic password. You can see here, just using that simple generic one that's used and asked to be changed. Here, I can, this is where I'm saying maybe you would want to put this on when you're creating them, and then enabling this notifications to allow them to get set. They're just getting their basic user. So I'm going to hit save. Oh, I totally forgot. Now we have to include the country. And her account has been created. It's just picking that up. And boom, she'll have got a notification. If we go here, I don't know quickly how fast, but you can see now that trigger has gone. Kristen has been given this. It's sat right now in the queue, and we can check it. We can look to see what it looks like, and now we can add it in. So just some nice ideas in order to make sure that when you're building these notifications out, you can go in, you can build them, you can look at them, you can test them, and then you can just apply them and really just forget about it. And then if anyone ever says, hey, I didn't receive a notification, you can come back and you can check, you know, where was it, right? It might be sat in a queue, it might be sat sent, it might be, you know, delivered or failed, it's depending on where we're at. So that's just like some of the really cool tips and tricks when you're building these out, for sure. It is really, really neat. What I am going to do is I'm going to share with you some outside of these. Hopefully now you see my screen. You can tell how bad I am with PowerPoint. But these are like some, just to get your minds thinking, where can we take these? I know obviously you're already thinking like, oh, I could do this, this, and this, but here are what some of the quick and simple ones that you can implement today that would be super awesome. We've looked at like the target. So we've got the target audience being your student, your instructors, and your operations managers. And then we have like what notifications really work for which. So things like, completing that survey post-class, getting usernames and passwords that we just saw, or, you were successfully enrolled in a class. What's nice is for instructors, the one that's used the most is the class status. If you've gone in and you've changed the class status from being deliverable to, you've cancelled it, they get that notification, or even that they've been assigned to a class, which is really nice. And then I would also like for operations managers that the course assignment has been completed, or a user account was created as well, right? So maybe if you want to change that where it's not, I as the operations manager send out a notification to the user when they have an account created. Maybe this time I want to know when was an account created so I can keep track of who's been doing it, if that's something I'm interested in. I think what works really hand in hand, and I think what we'll find as we keep going down this path at Skillable, is the next topic actually we're going to cover in the workshop is going to be webhooks. So we did last month we looked at APIs, and if you're familiar with APIs, that's why you're constantly calling the TMS. I need, right? You're constantly saying, create me this, or tell me the status of this. Now you can have notifications that send out people information, but you can also, with webhooks, is what our next topic will be, is you can now have it, instead of constantly calling the TMS, we can literally flip it the other way, where a trigger, just like the notifications, allows you to get that information. So if you're using a secondary platform to keep up to date with your records of what somebody has and hasn't completed, then webhooks are great. Notifications are great for you guys just to even get, hey, I need to know where we're at. So there's two separate ways of like allowing you to continue to get information that's valuable, and being able to get it out and to your users as well. So that's always some really cool little tips and tricks on how to create notifications, and how you're able to look at it from, like, if you're using the API. So if we think of a workflow, we can have things like, on the API, I'm going to create a class, I'm going to enroll a student, and I'm going to enroll an instructor. From the API, I've done all of those things. So that's the API part covered. Now I want to send a notification out. So I want to send a notification out to, here's the student's information, like here's the class stuff. As an instructor, I want to say, hey, you've been assigned to a class. Once all those have done and the class has gone ahead, maybe I have webhooks that link back to some form of LMS, or somewhere that you're collecting data that says this student, successfully passed this class, or this student completed the course as required. So being able to then see the workflow, and then you can have maybe a notification at the end when the class is being completed. Maybe you need to know, like, hey, go and fill out this post-class survey on the instructor, anything that you've got there. So you can really see how using APIs, notifications, and webhooks allow the workflow, the stream, to be so much more smoother and automated. And that's the goal, is to get you to the point where a lot of the stuff that manually people are doing, if you use APIs, if you use notifications, and when we implement webhooks, with the hope that it should be for next month, which we're on schedule for, that those things can help you kind of eliminate the manual process, and really allow you to focus on things that are super important versus these manual tasks that no one really ever wants to do. I know I certainly don't. So prizes and wrap up, as we it's as Kristen put it, it's a lucky Thursday for everyone involved. Sharif and David, both of you get some awesome prizes from Kristen. she will reach out to you and let you know. I'm not really sure what they are. Usually I get super excited. I'm like Oprah Winfrey kind of mode of throwing out things, throwing out stuff to winners. So this is awesome. You guys will definitely get that. Some of the other things that we've got going on that I highly recommend, right? We have these free webinar series. So this is a really great one. I'm actually attending it myself to learn a little bit more about how we are moving away from this completion-based training to more evidence-based training skills validation. I believe that one of the spokespeople is Brian Oakes from Pearson, so I'm super excited to hear that one. I believe we have Ashley and Katie on that as well from our teams. Ashley over the challenges and Katie over our services teams. If you haven't already, the lab developer workshop, 100% recommend this if you are a lab developer. That you learn so much from Paul. He's not as cool as me as a British one. I definitely I'm the cooler British one, but he's also British. He does deliver those two zones twice in his day, because he does for the morning and for the afternoon. But this is on the instruction set, so I highly recommend going in there if you're a lab developer. And then, as we say, we're kind of trialing this new one where we're going to do an 8 a.m. session for the operations manager workshop on June the 1st on webhooks. Again, if you're available and you can get up nice and early and listen to me for an hour, that'd be awesome. But webhooks, we're hoping, is going to be the topic for sure. And again, keeping in that process, that streamline of getting things definitely automated for you. And then finally, you can connect with us on Skillable. We have them on Slack, YouTube, all of the great things. Outside of make sure you add the trigger, my next thing is always make sure that you have somewhere the feedback portal. The feedback portal is super important to us at Skillable. We love to hear what people think about the products, what are we missing. It's also a really great way for you guys to say, hey, your platform could be better if it had X, Y, and Z, or hey, I like this feature, but it would be really cool if you could implement this. It is reviewed. Everything that comes through is reviewed by our team. I believe it's like every other week or every week. They review every feedback that you put in there. So if you think the platform is missing something, whether it be it's Scalable TMS, whether it be the Connect, whether it be reporting, anything like that, if you put it in there, if we don't have it, put it in the feedback portal, and hopefully you know, it will get implemented. And then finally, just thank you for joining us. It was a fun one. It was an hour of just learning about automated notifications. I definitely hope that you find that useful in terms of being able to streamline your workflow. If you continue on this path and see the webhooks, making it all come together will be really a neat one. So I do appreciate you joining us. I hope you have the wonderful rest of your day.